Welcome to the New Rainmaker Podcast, a weekly show for visionary founders and team members alike to come together and share the heartfelt, the cringe, and the radically honest truths about what it's really like to build and work for some of the world's most exposed brands on the biggest internet stages. I'm your host, Veronica Romney, and after working for some of the biggest names in the online space myself, I've learned that it takes both leadership and dream team collaboration to truly scale a company to its greatest potential. You can build a business alone, but you cannot scale it on your own. And my goal on today's episode and every episode is to inspire our dreamers and empower our leaders. Make sure to follow and share my podcast with your friends and colleagues, and feel free to tag me on Instagram at vromney with your insights and ahas. Now let's make it rain on today's episode. Okay, Rainmaker family, we're going to talk about something that has been pressing on my mind, and I'm sure yours, because all of us say and know to be true the value of community, but community can also go awry without the right safeguards. And what if I told you it wasn't trust and it wasn't communication that made the best communities or teams? And so I invited a guest to talk about this because she is one of the best when it comes to creating a community known as Dovetail. Look it up if you haven't heard it. It's phenomenal and very unlike anything else you've ever seen. And so I have on today's podcast, Miss Alexis Dean, who's going to talk to us about all things community, but not in the way that you've heard it before, because it's not the stuff that you see on like a bumper sticker that's going to make the difference. And I know all of us really crave it, but it often scares us on facilitating it. So, Miss Alexis, hi, how are you?
Hello, I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to talk all things community and team and organization and everything else.
Well, and let me set this up too, because I just concluded a peer mastermind at one of our Airbnb properties on the coast of North Carolina. And I won't disclose who said this out of, privacy, but there was one of the CEOs in the group who's an uber successful CEO. They're making six figures easily a month. And she had recently shut down her mastermind. And now this is probably the third or fourth person that I've heard just this year alone of a high-powered, decently exposed personal brand who has closed down a mastermind. And I don't know if this is common for you as well, but I'm seeing a lot of these. And I think what they thought the mastermind could be and their hopes and aspirations about curating and facilitating and holding a mastermind of really great human beings. And then it's not what it turned out to be for them. And then they didn't even feel safe proceeding with it themselves. And so I just want to talk to you about this because there's no coincidence in life. To whatever degree that you want to share, and maybe you want to do more of like a formal introduction, like who you are, what's your zone of genius, and how have you been able to pull this off for as many years running as you have? Let's just start.
Yeah, for sure. I have been hearing about this too from other business leaders who, whether it's they shut down a mastermind or they were on a trajectory to scale their company to a certain size, or they were building a larger organization, or they had this vision in mind or in heart, and then they decided to back off from that because it is a lot harder than it looks to build real community and to build real connection and to build strong teams, really. So my background is in facilitation and consulting and education. So when I went to school to be a teacher, and then I quickly realized that I was really good at leading teachers. So I became a teacher trainer and a facilitator, a professional facilitator, went back to school, did a postgrad in adult training and development so that I could really eventually build strong school cultures and then build strong teams. And so I spent about 12 years working as a consultant and a professional facilitator. And while on the surface of that work, I was doing communication training and leadership training, beneath all that, what we were really doing was building really strong, tightly knit communities and connections among the employees that we were serving. And so surface level, sure, it's communication training, but beneath it, it's really building a really strong community at work. Because that's what keeps people coming back and makes them want to be part of something, is when they feel really connected to it and loved and supported and part of a greater mission. So that was my background. And then I came back to Canada about 9 years ago after living all over the world, working as a professional facilitator for a couple organizations and in consulting. And when I came back, I started a corporate training company to do just that, to do the work of communications training, leadership training, but really beneath it all, at the time, I called it Dovetail because it's a symbol of interconnection. If you've ever heard of a dovetail joint, it's where at the corner of a log cabin, all the logs fit together. and they all interconnect. And so I called the team building company Dovetail because I really wanted to help people build those strong connections and build those communities at work. And then over the years, I realized that I wanted that for myself too in entrepreneurship. I had a thriving business and our company was growing across the country and we were doing well. And I looked around and I didn't have those interconnections for myself as an entrepreneur and as a woman who wasn't necessarily running an online business either. So I really wanted offline people too. I was finding a lot of the online people, but I really wanted the brick and mortars and other businesses like ours. And so that's where Dovetail started. That's where Dovetail came from. It's just this desire for me to have what I was building for other companies and to have that for myself. Just a really tightly knit, wildly supportive group of women around me. And that's what we have now 5 years later, which yeah.
Well, it's funny. It reminds me of when I was in college. I had some great roommates and I had some terrible roommates. And I remember when I left school and I got my first job at ancestry.com and I had enough money to buy this modest kind of townhouse. One of the big things I told myself, or one of the things I was looking forward to in having my own properties, I'd get to choose my roommates because it was a 4-bedroom and I got to lease out the other rooms to roommates. And so now fast forward, here I am as a full grown woman, an adult, at least I like to think that I am. And same thing. I think what's so exciting about my programs, I'm sure your programs, is that you're in a position to curate, to pick your own roommates, so to speak. So here we are, fast forward in that position of leadership ourselves and curation and compiling and putting together this room, virtual, in person, otherwise. And then it makes me so sad when they don't go as planned, or what, like you and I are seeing, that they're being shut down. So I'm just curious, in your expert opinion, when you're seeing this happen, what's the first thought? When you see it announced on Instagram, when you see it announced in an email or in a Facebook group or whatever, what's the first thing that goes through your mind as someone who has seen so much in the training that you've had?
Yeah, I think whether you are running a team or actually starting to build a community, I think that people get really stuck in what community really means to them and what they really want. And I think that specifically in the online world, I think a lot of the time people are using the term community, but they mean following. So they don't actually mean that they want communal connection among everyone. They want a following. And that is no knock. There's a lot of people that do really well with great followings. And then there are people who try to take a following and turn it into a real community.
Yep.
And if the expectations aren't aligned and those people that you're bringing together, if they still kind of are behaving like followers rather than as community members showing up for one another. And this can take place too if you grow a business, if you're, especially again in the online world or offline world, if you're somebody that has had a bit of success and you grow your team and your team comes in and they're kind of there to support you and your mission and you're sort of the head of things. And so then you're growing a following around you rather than a team of employees or community of employees that are really showing up to serve each other. So I think what I've seen, and this is not necessarily for all of them, I don't know everyone that's gone through this experience where they've shut down their mastermind or decided not to scale their business in the same way, is that sometimes you're just not matching expectations with the people who are coming in. So they're coming as followers rather than as community members of each other.
Oh my gosh, that resonates. I see it online. Well, there's so many things that play here, to your point. One, especially because when you say online, the online industry, what I hear is personal brands, right? So these are people that we buy from them to be them 90% of the time. You're buying the Instagram course, or you're buying the whatever thing because there's something about how this person is running their life or the position they've been able to achieve or reach. And you're I want what they have. And I like how they've done it, or I like what they stand for. I like their vibe, or I look like them, or I sound like them, or there's some, I remember growing up as a little girl, I loved Belle from Disney because she was the only brunette and I had brown hair. So sometimes messengers, you don't have to say anything different to make a difference because we resonate with the messenger, we follow messengers, right? So to speak.
Yeah.
But it's so fascinating that you share that with me in such an articulate way. Let me just say, this is something that we've been experiencing a lot because I have CEOs who've had really successful runs in hiring and building their team from their own students and members, because it
Mm-hmm.
like cuts the HR onboarding in like half. Like
Yeah.
they know the brand, they already know the voice, they
Yeah.
already know like the indoctrination of what we stand for, so to speak.
Yeah.
But we do a lot. So on our side, we do a lot of recruiting or hiring for CEOs that are looking for marketing leaders that we call rainmakers.
Mm-hmm.
And if I get on a call or my team gets on a call with a prospective rainmaker and all they do is gush and gush and gush about the CEO and how they love the CEO and how many, and like
Oh.
really personal details about the CEO, it's funny because I think if the CEO just heard that interview or conducted that interview, they would be super flattered, as one would be. And they'd be like, oh my gosh, this person's going to be all in. That's exactly what I want. I'm a startup CEO. I need people who are all in and get it. But when
Yeah.
I'm conducting these interviews or my team is conducting this interview, well, we instantly like pink flag, like flag goes up, because you and I both know that the CEO version of me that's running a business and doing hard things is not necessarily the persona that you see online. And
Yeah.
so they're going to get disillusioned very quickly if they're coming in as a raging fan, as opposed to somebody who wants to be here to make it better because they already see things. I remember Mark Zuckerberg said this. He's like, we don't hire people because they want to work at Facebook. We hire people that want to make Facebook better.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I'm saying we should emulate Mark Zuckerberg. I'm just saying, like, I got what he was
Yeah.
differentiating, which is like, I need people who see the company and the company's potential and also respectfully sees what we could do better from being a student or a member or whatever. But I
Yeah.
don't need somebody to want to work with me to be me. And you're seeing it in the mastermind, which is, I mean, yes. And also seeing on the team side, yes. And I'm like, my brain just exploded because you articulated something that we've been seeing for a while now.
Yeah, that's really important to note. And it's hard as the founder of a company who's hiring, or as the leader of a mastermind,
Mm-hmm,
or somebody
mm-hmm.
who's a coach who, like, it's great to be surrounded by people who love you and admire what you've built and all that. And it can be really hard to break up that or differentiate between that feeling and what you really want to build and what lasts long term. And how you really want to feel long term as a founder, whether it's a founder of a mastermind or a community, or whether it's a founder of a company. It's that feeling feels good short term, but then long term, for me, I've grown into a space in Dovetail where I'm not just the host of this community, or I call myself the steward of this community, but I'm also part of this community. Dovetail wasn't built on me. It's not called the Alexis Dean community. I'm not a coach. I am not the reason that people come. I might be the conduit. I might steward this community, but people come because we attract incredible women into our community, and they're at a certain space in their business where, they've had the success. They're at the 7, 8, 9-figure business, whatever, they've taken it public, whatever it might be. They've had that success, and now they want to turn around and look at what else is out there for me and how else can I make an impact. And so for a lot of them, that's like maybe starting another business, or maybe it's like diving into the nonprofit side of their work, or it's transforming the business that they've built into a way that serves them and their team more deeply, or having somebody else come in as the CEO, or just scaling that business to a place that they can make the impact they really want to make and feel the way they want to feel every day through whatever they're doing. And I think that's something that people who are building community specifically in companies, maybe they're not always thinking about how they really want to feel in it down the line. So it's good to have fans come in because, that pays the bills. But a couple of years in, if you're just surrounded by people who are fans and aren't there for you and aren't there for each other in the same way, that can be really difficult.
Well, and I think what happens is it becomes so taxing because it's never enough. I certainly, when I was chief of staff at Boss Babe, we experienced this when they kicked off their mastermind, and like it was never enough. The proximity to the faces where it was never enough, never close enough. There was always like, but wait, I thought we'd get more of them. And I thought, and I hear it, by the way, that's just one example, but like I hear it across the board when it's face led, then you want to be close to that face.
Right? Yeah.
So can you, besides not naming Dovetail after, you, besides that strategic move, how else have you strategically removed yourself or positioned yourself so that you are not the coach and the value is not found in the proximity? Because when I think of mastermind, especially as like an ascension offer or an elevate offer,
yeah,
And like when you think of a traditional ladder, value ladder of offers, you're like, okay, really clean examples, like, right, DIY, like you're doing this by yourself,
Yep.
2 thumbs up. Then there's a done with you, and then there's, done for you. But also, even if it's not that, it's almost like the value ladder becomes like you're not close to me at all. And then you get closer and closer and closer to me. And so when you say mastermind, like I'm thinking I'm in the room with Russell Brunson. I'm in the room with Tony Robbins. I'm in the room. There's higher proximity. So the fact that you're like, hey, I call myself a steward, conduit, not coach, not whatever else. How did you do it? Not for you to reveal all your, IP.
I'm here to reveal all the IP. I mean,
no, but like, I'm so impressed. And I think so many would want to emulate that. So like to whatever degree you want to share, but how did you strategically set yourself up so that it wasn't so taxing on you and you weren't mama to like 100 people?
Yeah. Well, I think it's been easier because I've never been that person and I'm not a coach. So the big secret is just don't get well known and famous.
Deal.
Hot tips. Just
tip.
Don't have too much public success.
Hide in the woods.
Have your success behind closed doors. No one will know. I think like it's hard. You can't necessarily, like, no one who has a mastermind or is a coach or is a persona can necessarily emulate this in this way.
Yeah.
But when I started Dovetail, I knew like 5 women that I could reach out to. And I asked them, who else should I talk to? And I said, at first I was like, oh, let's get a dozen women together. I wanted friends. Let's be honest. I was like, I want cool, down to earth women entrepreneurs who get it, who are in business, who are, at a level of success where they're not just trying to figure out what the heck they're doing. They've been through it and they're in a place now where they're like, how can we really do the things we really want to do? So instead of it being like, come follow me to this cabin in the woods or whatever, it was like, hey, I'm going to reach out and have these calls with these 5 women. I'm going to ask them what they think about this idea. Who else should we invite? Who else do you know? And then they kind of went out and shared it with other people. And then they shared it with other people. So it was never like, oh, Alexis is doing this thing. It was like, oh, the 5 of us are putting together this thing. Oh, so-and-so and so-and-so are putting together this thing. So it kind of spread like through this like really beautiful web versus from me. And so it's pretty much continued like that. We're almost 100% referral based.
Yeah.
Which is great and challenging in some ways.
Sure. Yeah.
And really looking to like diversify and grow. We have had some Europeans and women from South Asia and things, but especially now post-COVID, we're looking to expand in a different way. So we're getting beyond referrals, but it's still not about me. So I take our intake calls. I do all our curation, but I also rely on our other women in the community to support that. So like they will hop on calls. Like our ladies who've been around a while are like happy to talk about it, and they'll talk to people about it, and they'll happily share like their videos and whatever else with people, which is really, really been a huge part of it. Yeah, because they're invested in this too. And they know that everything I do is in support of what their best interests are. There's like a lot of communication between us. I text all of them. Pretty high touch. It's not, we're not just automated email funneling here. Like this is me in relationship with people. So I think that would probably be like if I was a coach and I wanted to actually have a community or a mastermind, or even just grow my team in support of each other rather than just following one person. I would look to like have those core, I called them our pillar women at the beginning, but those core pillars who are then there to share with other people and who really reflect the values that you're carrying. And I know we like hit values and culture over the head all the time, but it's so true. Like I had a really strong set of values when I started that I had listed and named. And like that came because my experience, my background was in building community and building culture. So I knew that we needed a really strong value set, and that those first 5 women that I reached out to had to understand what that was that we were looking for. I didn't want people who were going to show up in the room and be like, it's all about me. I wanted people who were like leading with generosity.
Yes.
Who were lifelong learners, who were open to learning, who were a bit adventurous because we were going to go to a lodge in the woods. We needed a bit of adventure and courage. And we needed women who had purpose, women who had been in business long enough to get to a place where they're like, oh, I've got a purpose behind what I'm doing. And maybe it's obvious and maybe it's also behind the scenes. And then humility. I don't know if it's a Canadian thing, but we have really attracted some like wonderfully humble and yet successful and supportive and And they're not self-diminishing, but they've carried themselves with a level of humility that is in service to everyone around them and all the people that they support. So knowing those values, I think, would be another really important thing for everyone who wants to build a community or build a really strong team in any capacity, in any business.
I literally just wrote it down on my piece of paper because like we talk about it all the time inside the Rainmaker residency. And like one of the things that we give to our CEOs, so when you join the program, they get like a welcome box. And one of the books I put in there is Extreme Ownership. Like it's like right there. Value is the book title because I love it so much. Not, you don't have to be in the military to appreciate that book and the principles found in that book, which is like, let's just start with me, myself, and I, and hi, I'm the problem. It's me, Taylor Swift style.
Yeah.
Because some of the best leaders are also some of the best, that's the thing about leadership. It's like, it's a paradox, right? Because you have to be equal parts open and humble and then certain and commanding to like lead people, So, but one without the other is a disbalance, We'll be back with this interview right after the commercial break. Did you know that I have a free Rainmaker hiring kit? Skip the formal recruiting process and learn how to source Rainmaker applicants that are already connected to you. I'll show you how to turn a walking testimonial into a rockstar team member for free. Head to veronicarami.com or click the link in my show notes to get your hands on the free Rainmaker hiring kit. Now let's get back to the show. Okay, there's a couple, oh my gosh, there's so many things that you shared. I actually want to go back to, I wrote this down on my little piece of paper, actually the remarkables. I wrote this down because I didn't want to forget. Again, I recently just had a couple of women at our beach property and no one paid me. And that wasn't, they got like, well, do you want me to pay you? I'm like, no, I'm craving this, me, myself. And that story resonates with me in all the ways. And I'm going to ask you a question because it's almost like I need you maybe to help me rewrite a story, but I invited them. They didn't pay. This was me reaching out to women that I felt like I could be safe and vulnerable in a room with.
Yeah.
But the one thing in this conversation, a lot of things came up. So I'm going to be a little bit vulnerable here, but I'm like, one of the things that I am constantly working on is one, remaining open to female relationships, and two, healing female wounds, because I can't say that I've always had the best female relationships. I've actually been deeply hurt or betrayed or whatever you want to call it by females in particular, more than male counterparts. And it was my friend Brooke in the room, Brooke Casanova, who is a genius. And she's like, V, what if, because again, extreme ownership, she's like, what do you think that you're doing to attract these unbalanced relationships, female relationships in your life? I'm like, oh my, way to ask me this at 12:30 at night. Like, it's like 1 a.m. I'm like,
oh my gosh.
Now I gotta like search my soul. And it's just, I've been like sitting with it. These prompts, when you get one of those prompts by really profound women who then prompt you to think profoundly, that's Brooke.
Yeah.
I'm thinking. And one of the things that she shared, she's like, maybe what will serve you is finding friends that don't need you, but choose you.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that's the thing that I've struggled with is like, especially the betrayal feeling is like, well, but I was there for you in your greatest moment of grief, or I was there for you, or I protected you even at my own peril. Like, come on, world, take me on. I'll shield it with my, steel wings. Come behind me. And then when you get stabbed in the back, you're like, wow, that really hurt.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, and so going back to how these values and what you put out there that are so much bigger than you, like a value of humility has nothing to do with you, but that's something that you're going to defend it. You're going to hold the integrity of that value. You're going to make sure you're the steward, not just of the group, but of the values and hold them accountable. Like you have to maintain the frame, like in psychology, you have to maintain the frame and let people, because people are going to push on the frame. That's, that's just how it works.
Yeah.
But it's up to you to maintain the frame. And if you, at any point that you let them push on you, then you're also communicating how you feel about your own values if you're not being a steward of those as well, right?
Yes.
So here's where I need you to help me rewrite my story. So I purposefully told these women, I was like, because they asked me, like, do you want me to pay you for this? It's just like, I'm like, no, because, and this is what I said, because I feel like if you pay me to be here, then the power dynamic changes and I am no longer equal to you. And the expectations for you on me, and I will feel that, and I can't come and receive as much as I plan on giving because you've paid me. Now, in your community, I don't know, you don't disclose any of that, but obviously like this is not for free. So, but you come and you receive. So how, maybe I'm telling myself the wrong story, that I think as soon as monetary is exchanged, then power dynamic instantly gets established and I am no longer equal.
Mhm.
Thoughts?
Yeah, it is a fine line.
Okay.
So you're not alone in
Okay.
that. And it's something that I have dealt with over the years, and it's definitely a conversation. Like I've connected with some of the other community leaders, not necessarily mastermind leaders, but the guys who are leading communities. Become friends with Hollis, who runs Baby Bathwater, and Jason Gaynor, who runs MMT. And we've had conversations about this because the community wants to support the person who's stewarding it or hosting it or leading it. Like I know, like for example, Baby Bathwater, that community has a board that supports Michael and Hollis in their leadership and wants to turn around and give back to the community because in the end, it really supports them. And I know Jason's experimented with having community members at different events supporting the growth of MMT. And I think we've all kind of experimented with it in different ways. I did a 2-day retreat where I had women alumni come in. And for me, I did it sort of separate from, it wasn't at one of our retreats because I was like, the retreats are really about serving everyone in the room. And they do still serve me in that space. But I hosted a separate thing, a separate event, just to look at the future of Dovetail. So I think people want to. And one of the nicest comments that I got from one of our members recently, and she's been with us since the very beginning, like 5 years. And she said, it's been really nice to see you step into a space where you can receive too. Ooh. And not just like, and not just the receiving for the sake of the good of the community that I host, that I steward, but receiving for myself too. And like being able to be more present. And that really, the being present and like receiving has only come like in the last, I would say, even year.
Okay.
And that's because we've been doing more small group events. Hosting in that way is nice because when I'm only hosting like 10 or 12 ladies, then I'm kind of in the room with them as well. So I also have got to a place where I know that I have created so much value for these ladies in the way that we host, the way that I gather them, the things that we do together. You know, there's like hard value of like, we're going to incredible lodges and venues, and the value of like just the space and the activities and that kind of thing. And then also like the round tabling and everything else. And then just the value of holding space is like, this is getting a bit woo, but there's an energy that like, as community leaders, as community stewards, we bring to the space. And it's like that energy that underlies, that creates this foundation for how everyone else can show up in support of each other. So I think that's the space that I've gotten to that's helped me to show up not only in service, but also in receiving, which is a gift to the people around us. You know, we always forget like they want to give.
Okay. I'm going to, if you're listening, you're not seeing me flail my hands like a chicken. If you're watching this or if my team clips this part of me, I look like a crazy person. Anyways,
okay, I'll join you. I know.
This is like the blooper reel right here. No. Okay, I just finished recording a podcast with Dr. Jordan Wiggins, who's my intimacy coach. And her whole thing is that, by the way, if you've never had her as a guest expert in your community, highly recommend. I can totally introduce you guys.
Please do.
She's fantastic. Her whole thing, I know like the premise, like she attracts you with like, hey, women, high performing women that would like a better intimacy life. I'm like, raise your hand, right? Everybody. But her whole thing, like her unique selling proposition, her IP, her methodology is the balance of feminine and masculine energy. And feminine energy is a receiving energy. But the thing is, the masculine is the one that gets us all the awards and accolades and the achievements and the growth and all the things that we talk about and celebrate for each other publicly and put on magazines and all the things.
Yeah.
But how often are we in a disservice to ourselves by not being in a position to receive? And so, oh my gosh, I just had this like massive, I'm like, so these mastermind groups or these community groups or whatever, when it gets so freaking hard and taxing and this and that, is because you haven't created in a way that you too can be fed and be in a position to receive from the thing that you've made. That would be, and again, women that can't receive have intimacy issues. We have health issues. We have a lot of stuff. So that makes total, oh my God, I'm freaking out. That makes total sense. And that's not woo. There's enough science to back this up. So number one, I'm grateful that I'm not the only one who has struggled to find that space where I can both show up as a leader, which tends to be more on my masculine side, but also curate a room of members and expectations and values where I too can be fed and received in a feminine way.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful that I just appreciate that you said, hey, I've been working on this too. I have conversations with my peers around this too, because no one talks about this. And yet we all want it and don't know exactly how to get there without, and also charge people and you know what I mean? So I really just appreciate your honesty. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it is a balance. And it is I've watched in other communities and heard from other communities, if you don't find that balance in a good way, people feel well, I've invested to be here, and now I'm spending my time building your business as the person who I already invested in. So you do have to toe that line. And I think it takes a little bit of time. It takes something that we haven't even touched on yet, but I think is at the core of all of this, because it is psychological safety. It is when people feel safe in a space, they trust you. They know that anything that you are open to receiving, or when you ask, that it's not coming from a place of greed because they've already invested to be there. Then if immediately you go to asking or wanting or more for you, they don't feel that balance and that equality within the relationship. And so then you lose the safety and the trust and everything else that you want to nurture. So I think it's a matter of timing. It's a matter of feeling into it. It's of looking for opportunity for people within the community to support each other, and for you to be in that space, but not to be the first one to ask, and to kind of give it the room to breathe before it comes to your turn in the circle of being a peer and being open to the receiving end of things. But it's not, there's no exact science to it. It's literally like a slow roll, and it's hard. I have friends who are leaders in their businesses and are coaches and who can't not be the person coaching at all times, or leading at all times, or being the CEO at all times. And even they're my friends, but I feel like they're even trying to lead me sometimes. I'm friends. I don't want you
We're
to
peers.
coach me.
Yeah. Hey.
You can stop. You're not my CEO. We're good.
That's so funny. I know exactly what you're talking about. That's so funny. Okay, so a couple of things that I've even, I think subconsciously, and now I'm bringing it to my conscious, I've been trying to do to take the pressure off being everything to everyone, even in my own group. So when I get questions, instead of feeling like I have to be the expert on all things, I'll be like, who's really freaking good at that? Who's the goat of goats on this particular thing? You should go talk to this member. So I'm trying harder to basically point people to other people so that I don't have to be the one-stop shop for needs or questions. But I think to your point, because I do also read every intake form because I know my members intimately, I'm able to do that, because I've gotten to know them and on a deeper way, which is the benefit of not having a group that's hundreds of people, which is damn near impossible to know everybody's first name and child's first name, or, you know what I mean? Personal things. And then the other thing we started to do in our group, I guess a hot tip that I've really enjoyed, is we've created buddy systems. So we're actually matching people every quarter to a different member for even more permission to date one another and get to know each other. And it's been this really beautiful thing that we never thought of until very recently. And they love their buddy. They love their buddy. And I think as your group gets bigger, it can be more intimidating, especially if you're newer. And so to be matched by us, I don't know, it just becomes not big sister, little sister, but in some ways it's just here's a guaranteed best friend. Go forth and enjoy each other's companionship in the walking of a similar journey. So, okay. You and I just want to, number one, I want to thank you because this is a really great conversation and a really great moment in time in our industry. And I personally have benefited from your genius, and I've had this huge epiphany live on camera. So thank you.
I'm glad the Muppet hands came out.
Oh my gosh. And I hope anybody listening and watching did too, because, especially if you have started to resent the thing that you built that was supposed to be beautiful and intentional. And now you're like, oh my gosh, maybe I've outgrown my audience. Maybe this or that. Maybe it's none of that. Maybe it's the lack of knowing awareness, intentionality around how you put the thing together and how you decided to show up in the thing that you put together is really all there is. And you've been pushing all these different things and bells and whistles, but ultimately it didn't create a psychological safety environment for both sides. How can people learn more from you? Like, honest to goodness, like, or explore the benefits of Dovetail? Because like, if all of this resonated with you and you've desperately been wanting something like this, like, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah. So funnily enough, and this is like part of, you're like, how did you not create this as a as a following? I'm not a very public individual. I am on Instagram sharing my cold plunges. I live on a lake in northern Ontario. Like I'm not, I do some speaking. I also still own my corporate business, but you can follow me on social. But also we do have like Dovetail Social, and we have a weekly newsletter that has just grown fairly organically. And I send out 3 things every week on Wednesdays, and you can get all of that just by following us on Instagram. It's Dovetail Community, all one word. So Dovetail is like Dovetail, and then community. And that's where you can see our kind of updates on any upcoming events, our upcoming summit in Maine, which I'm so excited for. I wish it was sooner. It's not till October. Right? But we're more than halfway full. So, and that's just, again, through organic and referrals. And if any of our alumni are listening, you better get your sponsor.
I know.
Because we're putting it out to the public as of now. So, but we're doing a few things throughout the year, and probably the easiest way to see if Dovetail is a good fit for you, and if you're in alignment with your values and where your business is and what you're looking for, is to follow us on Instagram. We also have a website, dovetail.community. You can see some of what's happening over there. And I don't have a lead magnet or an opt-in or a funnel or any of that stuff. But
you don't even need to. I love it. You're like, you know about me because you need to know about me. I hope
it's not that way. I have no ego here.
No. But I'm saying that people share Dovetail for you, which is a testament to what you've built. So like, if you're hearing this and this is resonating with you because it's the right time with the right person for the right season of your life, that's the kind of brand that you have, which is so cool to me. So anyways, thank you, Alexis, for being on today's Rainmaker podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Rainmaker podcast. We believe you can't get real results or have real relationships that last without being real first. If you resonated with today's episode, leave us a review so we can keep serving up the truth and tips that help you become the empowered leader that I know that you are. And always head over to veronicarami.com to check out all the free resources I have for you and the show notes from this episode. Until next time, my friends.